Hey, everybody. I think we are live. Let me just check all the streams where we are this morning and see if everything is coming up. Okay, I see myself in one spot. This is cool. All right, excellent. Hey, listen, this is going to be a really cool session. We're having a sort of an open Q&A today. And while folks are just starting to join us here, I'm just going to do a little bit of administration and make sure a couple of things are working here, because I want to make sure that I have all the tools at my disposal in case you have questions that I have to look up the answers to. But listen, here's what today is for. Today is really about giving you a chance to ask questions about anything that you think I might be able to answer. Now, if you're going to ask me about neuroscience and astroastrology or whatever, I'm not going to be able to answer those, obviously. But anything about speaking, anything about your signature talk, anything about storytelling, anything that you think is going to make your life better as a speaker or as an entrepreneur who speaks. And so that's what today is for. So I'm just looking on the screens and see if we have folks coming on board. It's a little hard to tell at times, so I'm just going to assume that that's happening for you. Okay, and I'm looking at one of our sources here, and I'm not seeing the stream happening on one of them, so I'm going to try that again and see what happens. There we are. Good. I think we are up and running. Okay, well, listen, we have 1 minute. We're 1 minute after the hour. We have no specific time limit today. It's really up to you and how many questions that you have for me. And I've got some questions that people have sent in. And so we're going to be able to answer those as well. And hopefully we're going to cover some things that will be of tremendous value to you today. So I just want to confirm with my wife, Jane. I don't know if she'll be joining us. If she does, that's great. If not, that's okay too. Babe, just give me a holler and make sure that we're streaming out there. Okay, so I just got the big green light from Jane. We are good to go. Okay, so let me tell you why we're doing this. Because we have recently launched a number of things. And we're getting a lot of questions about how those things work and how do we get involved and what do they entail. And if you've got questions, what I'd like you to do is type them in the chat window. Hello, Lisa Ann. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. And type them in the chat window. And if I don't see them, then Jane will see them and we'll try and get them answered for you as much as we possibly can. In the meantime, I'm going to answer some questions that were sent in advance. But what happened is we launched these things. We launched our new membership program, the High Impact Speaker Studio. We've launched the 2-day Signature Talk Intensive Training Program. We have the Art of the Signature Talk 5-day challenge, which we've done. We're going to do that again in January. And we have the Signature Talk Mastery online training program. And so we've launched all of these things over the last 2 months. And we're getting a lot of people ask questions about these offerings and about certain principles about speaking and storytelling and how to elevate your game as a speaker on the platform. So we thought, let's open up the lines. Let's do a Q&A and give you a chance to ask some of your own questions. So one of the questions that we get asked quite often is about the whole signature talk thing, right? And then people say, why do you need to have a signature talk? Well, let me tell you why. I'll give you a couple of examples. Earlier this year, we spoke, I think it was actually last year, about this time last year, we spoke at an event in Phoenix, an event called Go All In Fest, run by a friend of ours, Nim Stand. And hey, Gene, welcome. Glad to have you with us. And when we spoke at that event, the organizer, Nim, came to us and said she's having another one this year, which they just had a couple of weeks ago, a much bigger one. And she had 20 speakers. And she wanted us to train the 20 speakers to present to this event. So we did, and we put on some online training programs for them, and many of them came and did the training program. Some of the people I see here today went through that. And so with each of those nice folks, we taught them certain skills about speaking and presenting because they were all speaking at this event called the Go All In Fest, and they wanted to do a really good job. So with some of them, what we did was we gave them general content and helped them along, and others were participating in a little bit more in-depth training, and they wanted to learn more about their signature style and all those things. So one example that comes to mind, his name is Jeff. Jeff is an athlete. And what he wanted to do was come out and talk about his medals that he had won and all the principles that he had used to become a star athlete. And what we did with him is we crafted a signature talk with him whereby he came out in a suit and tie. And then what he did was, over the presentation, he started peeling things away. And then he ended up there in his tracksuit showing off all of his medals. And so this is an approach that we helped him develop so that he would have his signature talk, a signature style. And this is kind of what we do, is we work with speakers, coaches, trainers, authors, consultants, nonfiction authors, thought leaders, experts of all kinds, who have a message that needs to be shared, and a message that needs to be monetized. And we help them how to craft those messages so that they can do both of those. And so if I go back to the question of why do we need a signature talk? Well, here's one example, is that people are going to remember Jeff now, because he wasn't just somebody who got up and showed a bunch of PowerPoint slides and told stories. He actually gave the audience an experience. And so what happens now, they will attach his name to that experience, and they will remember him better because of the experience. And we have some people on the line here today that have been through our signature talk program. Some people have been here at our house and been on stage, and we put a stage in our basement and we build an audience there, and we go through platform skills. And some people in the room I see here have been there. And what we do is help craft your signature style. And the reason we do these things is because your signature talk is what identifies you out there in the world as a speaker or as an expert. And there are so many speakers and experts competing for the stages, the live stages and the virtual stages, that if you have a signature talk, you stand out, because most other people do not have one or two signature talks that identify them above everybody else. So here are a whole bunch of advantages to having your signature talk. Number one, it identifies you, as I just mentioned. That's probably the most important thing. You're the person that talks about this. And so when you are the person, you have an advantage over everybody else. But there's some even more practical advantages to having a signature talk. Number one is you don't have to prepare a new one. I know so many speakers who get so stressed every time they get a speaking gig because they have to start over again and pre-prepare, and they have to build everything from scratch. But when you have a signature talk, believe it or not, you can customize your signature talk for just about any audience just by modifying roughly 10% of the content. Please hold, this just in. It's all good. Hey, I just got a big green light from Jane. That's excellent. So, so where was I? What did I just say?
You're asking me.
I'm asking you. Okay, so you don't have to keep preparing. You can customize your signature talk just by customizing about 10% of the content. The other thing about your signature talk is you master it so well. You master it so well that you don't need to really rehearse or practice so much. You get so good at it that your delivery becomes masterful. These are all reasons, and there's so many more. These are all reasons why you need to have your signature talk. So we have a couple of other questions that came in. I know you're standing here. Let me introduce you to Jane coming into the frame. Hey.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions of people who can't make it live today, and they sent me some emails. So I thought I would just ask you those questions.
Okay,
so
sure.
One of the questions was, what's the difference between doing a 2-day signature intensive with you, where you're actually working with people, as opposed to the Signature Talk Mastery online program? What's the difference? Why should someone, maybe they've bought the online program, but now, they're considering doing the 2-day experience with you. Why should they do that? What will the difference be for them?
Sure. Okay. So the difference is like this. It's like learning how to swim from reading the book versus learning how to swim from jumping in the pool.
Right.
So when you buy the Signature Talk Mastery program, it has everything in there. That's the online self-directed course.
Right.
It's got everything in there that you need to craft the signature talk, and it's step by step by step by step. And if you do all those things, you'll have your signature talk, and it will be good, and you'll be able to use it anywhere. The difference, though, is that when you take that signature talk and you bring it and you come to the 2-day program, we go much deeper. You get my input on every single thing that goes into that signature talk, and it's not open to interpretation. You see, what happens is if we get 10 people who goes through the Signature Talk Mastery online program, they're going to follow the instructions, according to how they interpret those instructions, and they're all going to come out with something different, which is okay, But those instructions are actually designed for a very specific outcome. And so I can't really explain those details in the online course because I can't interact.
Right.
But when you come to the live or the virtual 2-day sessions, I can interact and I can explain exactly why everything is the way it is. And the other thing is that in the Signature Talk Mastery program, the online program, it's kind of, it's for everybody, right? And you take it, and as I said, you interpret it as you will. But the reality is, even though the principles are correct, they're not applied the same way with everybody. So if I have 2 or 3 different people going through a program, we will apply the same principles and we will apply them differently for each person.
Right.
According to so many things, according to their desired outcome, according to their personality, according to their topic, according to their skill and experience level, all these things. So the biggest difference is you have access to my input when you're developing that signature talk.
I like to say you're brilliant. You can say
thanks.
your input, but I like to say you're brilliant.
Well, some people think they're one and the same.
So another question was, how many people will be in that group? Like, is this going to be like another typical group program where there's 20 or 30 people and, you're just going to be training? How many people do we have in that group?
Maximum 5. On the rare occasion, we've had 6, and 6 works okay too. But we say 5.
Right.
And the reason why I like to keep it small is because there is a lot of interaction. Right. And I want people to be able to ask questions, and I go through each person in the group, and with each exercise, okay, now you do it now and guide you. Okay, now you do it now and I guide you. And I want to give everybody the opportunity to have that one-on-one input in those 2 days.
And what will they have at the end of the 2 days?
Yeah. So at the end of the 2 days, they will have this. They will have what I call the framework of their signature talk. Now, what that means is, I call it the framework because once you have, it's like the foundation of building a house, right? And then you can put anything you want on top of it. But that framework is the hardest piece to create.
Right.
But you will have a version of your signature talk that you will be able to give immediately. Right after you leave, you will be able to give your signature talk on any platform in any environment. And then as you go forward, you'll be able to build on that framework, and you'll know how to build on that framework. So that's number one. You'll have that. You'll leave the 2 days, you can go and speak somewhere. You'll also have what I call your signature story, which is part of your signature talk. So your signature talk has a lot of things in it. And one of those things is a signature story. So we find your signature story, whatever that is, and we put that in there. We craft it a very specific way. You'll also have what I call your signature message, because your signature story has within it a message, and that forms the foundation that your signature talk is built on. So you'll have your signature message, and all of that goes into your signature talk. And you'll also have some idea about what your signature style is going to be. We're going to go through the different principles of delivery, and you'll be able to go, oh yeah, that sounds like me, or that doesn't sound like me. And you'll be able to start the process of choosing your own signature style.
And what if another question that I got was, I'm just starting out on my speaking journey. I've maybe, this one person, they had given 1 or 2 talks, is this a good time for them to be doing the 2-day signature talk, or is it for more advanced people? Now,
the answer is it depends. Certainly it's a value for emerging speakers as well. But here's where you should be before you come to this course. You should know what you speak about. Right. I'm an expert in this. I have a story about this, and this is what this is the key message that I want to share. So you need to understand what your path is, at least to a general degree.
Right.
If you're coming and saying, someday maybe I might consider maybe being a speaker, but I don't know what to speak about. I don't have any stories. I don't know what to say. Then you're not ready for this. You need to know what your direction is, your general direction. You should have if I asked you, what are you an expert in? You should have an answer. If I asked you, what is the change you want to make in this world? You should have an answer. If you have those things, you're ready to go.
And is it just for people who are getting on big stages, or, does everybody have to have a signature talk? What's your feeling around that?
Yeah, so there's 2 questions there. The first one is no, it's not just for big stages, and the second one is yes, everybody has to have one. So here's what I mean by that. I believe that everybody who wants to share their message, their expertise, their wisdom, their creativity, their brilliance, anybody who wants to share that to the world through speaking, whether it's on a platform like an actual stage, or in a boardroom, or on a screen, or even in videos, blog posts, or even one-on-one.
BNI.
Yeah, at BNI, networking groups. Anybody who has a message that they want to share, it's for them, and they all should have a signature talk. And I'll tell you again, the main reason why is because you need your name to be attached to something.
Right.
And if you're a generalist, some people come and they say, well, I can speak about anything. I got 25 talks I could give.
Right.
Well, the problem with that is then people don't know where to place you, and you become known as just a generalist, and nobody knows how to peg you. So with a signature talk, what it does is it helps people attach your name to your specific expertise. And then over time, you become the one. And with that signature talk, it's great because you can do it on big stages. We do it on big stages all over the world. We do it on small stages. We do it on screen, right? We do it on podcast interviews. We do it on our own videos. We do it on, in webinars, and we use it everywhere we go. And it's all a version of the signature talk.
Someone else asked me the question. So great, I have my signature talk. I've taken this program. Now I want to find some stages.
Yes.
What do I do? Like, how do I find them? And so, my answer is, well, we just had this amazing day last week, and we recorded it all. And if you join the 2-day signature talk experience, we will gift you that recording. And who were some of the people that we had? I mean, they were just phenomenal.
Yeah. So I'll list them in a second, but let me tell you where this came from. Like Jane said, is that we get that question, or where do I go get speaking gigs? Right. And so we thought, let's help them, let's help our participants find the gigs. And we're not a speakers bureau. We're not speakers agents. We don't do that, but we know people who do. So here's what we did. We called in some favors. Yeah. We went out there and we went through our network, and we had a day last week, and Jane hosted it, and it was absolutely magnificent. And here's who we had there. We had a speakers bureau, a global speakers bureau called Unique Speakers Bureau International. The owner was there, and one of their representatives from the US was there. And this is all recorded, and people got to ask them questions. How do I get booked by a speakers bureau? What do I have to do? What do speaker bureaus look for? How do they get paid? How does it work? And so they gave a great presentation on how do you get booked by them. So if you want to go global, if you want to take your business on an international level, that how to do it is
or
there,
even
right?
Not international. I mean, they book North America.
They book everywhere.
Yeah, they book everywhere.
So we had them. Then we had interviewed the CEO of Speaker Spotlight here in Canada, major speakers bureau. So we had interviewed him, and he gave us his perspective on exactly what speakers bureaus look for. And if you have this question in your mind, how do I get booked by speakers bureaus? The answers are there. So we had him. We also had Sherry Bricks. Sherry Bricks is the executive director of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers and the Global Speakers Federation, and she is the owner of Bond Association Management. And she knows everything there is to know about booking speakers because she runs association events all over North America and the world. So she was there talking about how to get booked in associations.
What are associations looking for in speakers, and where can you find the associations?
Yeah,
there was a whole conversation around that.
Yep. And we had Gio Marcico, right?
Yeah.
And Gio runs the Archangel Summit every year, and he brings like the biggest of the big, right? He brings all the big global speakers and a lot of entrepreneurs, and so he came on and talked about what he looks for.
Right, and he gave a lot of gifts of if you're looking to be booked in a private event, what do you do to get the producer to notice you? And so he gave a lot of tips around, as a speaker, what could you do that would be unique and different? So that was really cool. Yeah. And then we had Jackie Lappin from Speakertunity, and she has a very unique opportunity that they've just created recently. And it's where you can find out where a lot of the speaking gigs are all over North America. Now, she does have them segregated by areas. So you could do them by state, you could do them by country, and they're all listed there for you. So you've got emails, you've got contacts, you've got the event. All you have to do is go in there and fill out a form and request to be a speaker. Yeah. So she spoke about that, which was really awesome.
We had Tom Poland from Australia.
Yes, we did.
Who talked about how to use speaking to drive revenue through webinars.
Yeah.
And we had Liam.
And then we had Liam Austin also from Australia, currently living, where did he tell me he's living? Like Norway or something like that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's somewhere over there. And he spoke about summits and some really great details. Lots of giveaways, also free giveaways for you to figure out how to do a summit, and talked about how to get paid for a summit, how to book people, how to build a list through a summit. So we gift you that recording
Mm-hmm.
once you join us on the 2-day.
It's a whole day's
signature
worth
talk
of content.
experience.
Yeah. And so if you've ever asked yourself the question, how do I find speaking gigs? If you can't find the answer in there, it's because you're just not paying attention.
It's true.
Okay. So yeah. And I love that we were able to put that together for our community, because that is probably the biggest question.
Right.
Where do I find?
And we have another one coming up on December 7th.
We do.
For podcasts. So we have the owner, Alex, I don't know how to pronounce Alex's last name. Sanfilippo, owner of Podmatch.
Yeah.
And he'll be with us for a couple of hours. And we're giving away a speaker one sheet that will be blank so that you can fill it in with all the pertinent information you need and how to go on there and book podcasts. So, a lot of people with COVID and the pandemic have not wanted to travel anymore.
Yeah.
And they want to speak, but they're speaking through podcasts. So that's a really good opportunity for people.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great.
And so if people want to look at signing up,
yes,
if they go to my website, stevelowell.com, they'll find it there.
Yes, it's under products.
Under products.
And one of the products is the 2-day. I believe there's a pop-up.
There's a pop-up anyway
that comes up.
Yeah. So go to stevelowell.com and all the information will be there for you.
And you're in LinkedIn, you're in Facebook. This is how you're watching the live. And we have been posting every single day about it. So I'm sure you can easily find it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
That's all the questions that came through for me. I'm not sure if we have any questions from our audience.
No, I'm looking at the chat. I'm not seeing any questions come through at this point. I'm checking the other pieces. Let's see what we've got. So folks, if you have a question about anything that we do, if you're a speaker, if you're an aspiring speaker, if you're somebody who has the message that you want to bring to the stage or to the platform, and you have some questions about, storytelling or tactical questions or anything that you think I can help you with speaking, now would be a really good time to do that, because we're here to answer your questions. So I had one question come in not long ago. It wasn't for this session, but I want to ask it anyway.
Answer it?
Yeah, I want to answer it anyway. We get, and this happens a lot. One of the questions that often comes up when I'm working with people is, how do I know what stories to use? How do I know what stories to use in my signature talk? And I get a lot of people who come to me with what they consider to be big stories, right? And sometimes, and they are big stories, right? Sometimes people have, they'll have a relationship issue, or they'll have a health issue, or they'll have some kind of catastrophe in their life, and they've learned a lot, and they've overcome some big barriers and mountains to climb, and they've learned a lot from those stories, and they want to bring them into their message. And I agree with that, and it's a good thing to do. But here's where you want to be careful with selecting your stories, okay? What we need to understand about our stories is that just because our story is important to us doesn't mean it's important to the audience. And so here are some guiding principles that you can use to choose the stories that you tell. Here are different purposes for stories. A story may be able to reveal something about your personality, in which case it doesn't have to be a big story. So if you've ever seen me do, the mustard story, or Brian the tennis instructor story, or the bird poop story, these reveal a little bit about my personality. Not big stories. They're interesting little tidbits that reveal something about my personality. So that's one reason. If you've got a story that does that, that's a good story. If it reveals something about your skill, about your ability, that's a good story. It doesn't have to be a big disaster story, but if you can demonstrate in your story how you got a great result for yourself or for somebody else, that's a good story to use. And then there's the big stories. And I want to talk about this for a second. The big story is the story that you're going to use that forms the foundation of your presentation. And here's a guiding principle that I try and get people to use. In order for your story, whatever it is, the big story, in order for your story to be the foundation of a transformational message, your story needs to be bigger than the audience's story. And so what that requires us to do is it requires us to take our story, put it in our hand, and step back from it and kind of get our ego out of the way a little bit and say to yourself, this relationship issue was hard on me. It was an awful story for me, but is this bigger than most people? This injury that I had, it was awful for me. It was terrible for me, but is this bigger than most people's experiences? And what you need to understand is that your story needs to be bigger than theirs, bigger than the audience's, in order for it to really have the transformational impact. So I want you to look at your stories. If you're wondering about your big story, if you're wondering if you should use it or not, what you want to do is ask yourself the question, I know it's big to me, but is it going to be big to them? And make that decision before you use it as the foundation story upon which you build your signature talk.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's use you as an example. So what would you consider your big story is?
Me?
Yes.
I don't actually have a big story.
Okay, so I do believe you have a big story.
Which one?
And your big story is Brian, the tennis instructor.
Okay.
So maybe explain, mess moment message.
Yeah, mess moment or mission.
Where you don't have to have something traumatic that happened to you.
Right.
So when you're talking about your story has to be bigger than the audience's story, that's if you have something that traumatically that happened to you, right? I'm asking.
Yeah, the big story I would consider to be like either a big trauma,
right,
or a big accomplishment,
right?
Like Axe, right? We have a client named Axe out of New Zealand or Singapore. This guy gets in homemade rowboats and rows them across the most dangerous oceans in the world, right? That's a big achievement,
right?
Big story.
Right. So, but Brian, the tennis instructor, is a big story for you. I mean, people know you around the world, right?
Yeah, they know me around the world. Yeah.
So I'm just asking, so the audience, because some people don't have big stories,
right? And that's a question that just came up.
Was that from Jean?
Yeah, one of the questions that just came up, and Simone has a question too. Great, Simone, type your question in there, and we'll definitely answer it. And Jean says, "What if I don't have a bigger story?" Okay, I'm going to answer your question and their question.
Awesome.
I'm going to use my flip chart.
Get out of the way is what
you're telling me. Get out of the way. Get off the stage. Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Now, some of you have seen this before, but let's talk about this, because this is another thing. I like Jean's questions is what if you don't have a bigger story? Okay. Here's what we have found in going all over the world, doing this for so many years. We found that there are 3 primary motivators that drive what we do as speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, experts, nonfiction authors, whatever. There are 3 primary motivators. Now, one of those motivators is what I call a mess. So a mess is, in my terminology, this is the big story. A mess is where something huge has happened to you that has changed the trajectory of your existence. So, for example, we have one client in New Zealand. She's been a friend and a client for many years. When she was 16 years old, she was abducted and gang raped by a gang called the Mongrel Mob in New Zealand. And then, of course, she overcame all of that. That's a big story. We have a colleague, a client who lost a leg in a volcano eruption on the mountain he was climbing. That's a big story. We've got, people who have been born with debilitating illnesses and have overcome them. That's a big story. So this is what I call a mess. Okay. And you may have a mess. And this is kind of what I was talking about a few minutes ago. If you think that you have a mess, a big story that has set the trajectory of your life, you may have. And if you have one, then it's powerful and it can be used, and I can show you how to use it. But what you want to do is you want to look at that mess and you want to evaluate this and kind of ask yourself the question, is this really a mess in the world's perspective, or is it just a mess in my perspective? And you need to step back and ask yourself, is it really big enough to base everything on? And it may be. And if it's not, you can still use it. But you want to be careful of using this as, hello, world, I want you to listen to me because this thing happened to me. And what you want to avoid is the world saying, well, no, geez, that's nothing. I've had a lot worse than that, and that's what you're trying to avoid. But a mess is a primary motivator. So maybe you have that big thing. So when Jane asked me, what's my big story? I said, I don't really have one because I don't really have a mess that's relevant to what I do anymore. I used to when I was doing other things, but I don't really have a mess in my mind that I think is big enough to represent a mess. I've got stories, but nothing that I can say is, look, the reason why you should listen to me is because of this big thing. But you may have that. So that's a primary motivator. Secondary motivator, or the second of the 3, is what I call a moment. Now, maybe you don't have a big mess, but maybe you have a moment. And this is kind of where I fit in. I identify more there. And when I say a moment, what I mean is it's a moment in time where you had the realization that this is why you were here, or this is what you're good at. So I can take you right to a moment in time. I won't do it today, but I can take you right to a moment in time where I remember going, this is what I'm good at. I want to do this. And I never knew that before that moment. And it happened. I said, there it is. That's why I'm here. And it's clear as, in my mind. So maybe you have that, or maybe it's a series of moments that led you to an understanding of your purpose or your direction or your drive or your passion. So maybe you have a moment. And if you don't have a mess or a moment, then you might have what I call a mission. And a mission is where you've got a bigger purpose in this world, right? You've got something in this world that you want to change. There's a cause that you want to evangelize. There's some legacy that you want to leave. There's something in this world that you want to leave in better shape than it was when you found it. And that might be you. Now, generally, when I do this in front of a large audience, I ask the audience, put up your hand if you see yourself somewhere in there. And in every case, all hands go up. And most people see themselves somewhere in there, and many people see themselves in multiple places in there. So when we're talking about stories, generally, the big story is going to be somewhere in here, probably. Okay? And that's generally where you're going to find that big story. So here's what we do then. We take our mess, our moment, and our mission. And from there, we package it up and we create or craft our message. And we take that message to the world. And basically what we're saying to the world is, let me tell you about this big mess that happened to me. And this is the message I learned from it. Or you might say, let me tell you what happened to me when I found my gift. And let me show you how I've been using it and how I can help you with it. Or we'll say, let me tell you about this mission, this cause that I have, and let me show you how you can join my cause. And we do these things because we're all after some sort of a desired outcome. We want to achieve something. And for some of us, it might be impact. For some of us, it might be income. For some of us, it might be influence or a whole host of other things. But what we do is we take the message that we've learned from our mess, moment, or mission, and we try and get up to here with the desired outcome. And most times it doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is because what's missing right in the middle here is that signature talk. So when you craft that transformational signature talk, what it does is it helps you use the story from your mess, the story from your mission, the story from your moment, and put it together and go towards the outcome. Now, if we go back to stories, I want to go back to the conversation of stories. And Jean asked about, what if I don't have the big story? Well, Jean, if you don't have the big story, then here's what you want to think about is, what is the moment, think about a moment or a series of moments in your life where something occurred to you that set the trajectory of who you are and what you do. And if that doesn't work for you, put your mind to, what is it you're trying to change in this world? What is the mission you're trying to create in this world? And then what you do is you find other stories that support these. You don't have to have a big story. What you need to have is usually either a mess, moment, or a mission, and you can find other stories that support the mess, moment, or mission. You don't need the big story. Okay? As long as you have these, then you craft the message. So it all comes together and helps you get towards that desired outcome, and it all needs to be packaged in a transformational signature talk. Did I answer the question, do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that for you, like, because you have that moment, right?
Yeah.
Your big story is one of your clients
Okay.
and what happened, right? Like, I think that's awesome.
Yep.
I think that's
Could
amazing.
be. It could
Yeah.
be. Yeah. Okay.
Jean has mine is more of a moment too. I question my story because it's not a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a mess, right? As long as it's something, you have skills, you have knowledge, you have wisdom, you have experience, you have talent, you've got all of these things that you can use. You don't need to have a big story. What you're going to need, I think, is supporting stories along the way.
Which is what you have.
Which is what I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
All right.
is awesome.
I think Simone was going to ask a question. She hasn't typed it in there. Unfortunately, that's the only way we can get your question, Simone. So if you want to type it in there, we'll wait for a second for that to happen. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat here. Let's just see. I'm not seeing them anywhere else. Okay, so this is a going once, going twice, gone kind of situation. So this is your opportunity. Last chance. Anything else come in?
Nope. Those were all the questions. Thank you for answering them.
All right. And
I
don't forget, go to, what do we got? Oh, another question.
Jean, another question.
Okay, Jean, we're going to hold off for you. Okay, here we go.
And Simone has.
Simone's question is, how do we know my story is big for my audience? Do I have to worry about how will my audience use my big story experience to apply to their life? Okay, the thing is, you don't really know how big your story is to the audience. This is an introspection thing. It's a judgment call, I think, right? And so when I'm working with a speaker and we're going through a story, I ask them a bunch of questions, and maybe this will help you, Simone. I ask questions like, tell me exactly what happened. You know how some of you have been to the training, right? And I say, take me to the moment in time. And what I want to get from them is, where did it happen? When did it happen? Who was there? What was said? What exactly transpired? I want to get the details of the actual story, because sometimes what happens is people think that the big lesson they've learned from the story, they think that's the story, but really the story is this tiny little piece in the middle. Okay. So we need to find out what exactly is the story. And so I want you to think about this, Simone, and anybody else who has this question, just go through your mind and get the details fresh in your head. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who was there? What was said? What exactly transpired? Then you want to ask yourself this question. What are the chances that people in my audiences have had something similar happen to them? And if it's not even similar, what are the chances that somebody had something bigger happen to them? And all you're looking for is this gut feeling is my story bigger than theirs? And there's no measure for this. There's no checklist for this. It's just a gut feeling. But it does require you take your ego out of the equation. And it does require that you look at it objectively. And you just want to ask yourself, is this story really big enough? And if you believe it is, then okay, then go for it. Yeah, then go for it. Right. And she had a second part to that question. And then we're going to get to Jean's. And she said, do I have to worry about how will my audience use my big story experience to apply to their life? Well, I wouldn't say you worry about it. I mean, that would be the hope. The hope is that the reason why you're presenting the story and everything else that goes around it is that you can affect change in somebody's life. Right. But, I don't worry about it. You shouldn't worry about it. You should do your best to make it happen. So here's an additional answer. It's just kind of coming to me is, and this is what I try and do, and I try and encourage speakers to do this, is whenever you speak and you're telling your story or any part of your signature talk, you want to get yourself into a mindset of service. You want to be in a position of service to the audience. Okay, how can I best serve this audience? And you do your very best to serve, and then the rest is up to them. Yeah, great. Okay. Jean, someone gave me feedback that my speech was inspirational and didn't give them the steps, which I thought I did. Okay. Does this mean I wasn't clear? Okay. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I can tell you this. You can give people step-by-step clear instructions. You can say, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. And there will be some people who will come and say, I didn't get the instructions. Right. So here's what I would suggest. Because Jean, you're a client of ours. And you have the opportunity through the membership site to do a hot seat with Steve. And so what I would suggest is go into the membership portal and register for a hot seat and let him go through that piece. And then it's a great learning tool for you. And it's a great teaching for all of our other members in the membership site. So that's what I would suggest. Yep. Good idea. That's a great idea. And then you'll get the best answer because, it's hard for Steve to answer when he doesn't know really how you delivered that. Yeah. Great. All right. I think that's a wrap for today. I think so too. Hope you guys found this of value. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned on our social channels. Happy Black Friday. And happy Black Friday. That's right. And happy Thanksgiving to all of our American colleagues south of the border. All right, everybody. Anything else? I think we're good. All right. We're good. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.